It's my honor to introduce Dr. Michael Winters here for our feature presentation. He's in private psychotherapy practice. He specializes in the practice of logotherapy, which is a school of psychotherapy developed by Viktor Frankl, which emphasizes the importance of finding meaning in life in all circumstances, even 2020. He's been the director of Rice University Counseling Center and has taught multiple courses through the Rice Continuing Studies program. Join me in welcoming Michael Winters here for his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ken. I really appreciate it. So let me just tell you a little bit about how Ken first approached me. This was probably late January or February of this year. And they were looking for a full day speaker for the annual retreat. And I said, that sounds great. I'm really interested. I'm surprised. Even looking at some of the pictures, there's people that I know that are part of this group, and the speakers is like, oh, those are people that I really admire. And yet I was not aware of this group. And so we started planning for the meeting, the in-person meeting. And I was really excited about it. And then, a few things intervened that you might have heard about. There's this COVID thing, which has changed our world. Then later in the summer, there's, a lot of social unrest, a lot of protests. 2020 is not shaping up to be a good year. And then, when we decided on this date, I said, well, at least the political tension and the election will be over by this time. But things keep going. And then yesterday on my morning walk, my knee gets a little glitchy. So this year, 2020, has not necessarily been a great year for all of us. So when we were talking about, we got a shift and we're not doing a full day, maybe 2021, I'd love to spend a full day with you guys up at the land of my grandfathers. But for today, just this brief one, I said, let's scrap what we have and let's just focus on joy and focus on rediscovering joy, because that's really something that, as Ken alluded to with Viktor Frankl, that we can find meaning in any moment. And I want to focus, though, specifically on finding joy. So we're going to spend the next bit of time together looking at some strategies and some ways that we can find joy even in this really troubling time that we're in. So I was talking about my glitchy knee and about all this stuff that's been going on. And it's not that I don't think that's important. Of course, that's important. But what I really want to help you focus on today, help all of us focus on today, is the possibility of being in a joyful mindset. There was back in the 90s, there were all these little bracelets, WWJD, what would Jesus do? I've kind of repurposed that. What would joy do? Or if you want JC, what would joy consciousness do? So recognizing we can find that even when things are really bad. And that's what we're going to do today is look at some of the ways that we can find happiness, find joy, even when there's chaos all around us. So I'm going to give you one example, and then I'm going to ask you to think of some things. But here's my example. So what I've got on the screen right now is a little, it's a little sticky note. Earlier this year, I basically shut down my psychotherapy office. I have an office that I still pay over $1,000 a month for, but I haven't been there in over 6 months. So everything I'm doing is from my house. And so we had repurposed this room. Actually, that's, if you see this art on the back, that's this was the room that was my granddaughter's room. She loves color, and my wife's an artist, so they created all this. And now my granddaughter lives next door, so it's not like she really had, I mean, there was a few days that she was over here, not really a whole lot of time. And then the longer the COVID crisis went on, the longer I needed this room, I kind of took it over. So it's my office now. And yet she snuck into the room and put this little sticker. I love you so much, Pap. She's 7, and with the hearts and the stars. Her name is Olivia, and she goes by OJ. Olivia June goes by OJ. So she put that on there. So here's, even in all of this chaos that we've been experiencing, here was this one little moment of joy. So she put that on there, gosh, back in May, June. And I've still got it on my computer, because that to me is that little moment of joy. It's not huge, it's not expansive, but it's really valuable and precious. So what I'd like you to do, and you can write this down if you want to, or if you just want to type it in the chat, just take a moment and reflect on at least one, maybe tiny little moment of joy that you've had in the last 7-8 months. So just think about it, let yourself be with it, and we'll just put it in the chat, and we'll talk about it as we look at this, and invite you to get more present to what do you have to be joyful for. Okay, we've got the sunset and a sunrise. That's perfect. It's a full cycle there. Newest grandson. You know, even in this year that we'll probably remember as a really terrible year, there are wonderful things happening. A brand new grandson, singing, helping people laugh. We got a lot here. Traveling in Wyoming with my son and friends on the Oregon Trail. Man, that's great. One of the things I've loved until my glitchy knee is getting out and walking every day, you know, staying 6 feet away from people, but just being out in the open every day. Reconnecting with old friends, music, daughter's weddings. We have children being born. We have new unions being made, even in this really terrible year. Living, it's going too fast. Living with my son, Dwayne, in Maui. I can love my grandchildren. The ability to be the observer, great stuff. Loving wife, granddaughter, grown into a confident woman. Another engagement, trip to Yellowstone. Making connection with men through check-in and connect. You know, that's the other thing is you know, even at first, it was like very weird for me to do this, you know, kind of counseling through technology. I'd done it a few times with people, but very little. And now I've found that, you know, the technology is just a conduit to connection. So even though it's not the same, even though I'd love to be with you guys at the land of my grandfathers, you know, not able to do all that. But okay, I'm going to have to, okay. Holding Naomi, my wife's professional singer, telling me the new CD my buddies and I completed was really, really good. Relationship with my partner, gotten the key and reclaimed my lover from the schism wound. I have my 13-year-old being, my dogs. Adopted a dog, great company. Yes, we did. We have one dog, and Kelly took on a foster dog for a while, a young German Shepherd, and she started walking a whole lot more because this German Shepherd was not really taken to the low energy. Our older dog, 3-legged dog, stays quiet. This one really needed a lot of exercise, so it got Kelly out and walking every day. So adopting a dog. So life, Michael, just being aware of life, playing online chess, granddaughter online, Ollie. She trash talks me while she beats me. That's great. If you haven't seen The Queen's Gambit, I really recommend that. That's a great little chess story. That's really fun. Being at LOMG and seeing all the upgrades, is still being able to go and see everything that they're doing, which actually, this is a great time. There's nobody there interfering with the work, so they can get it done. And maybe 2021 will be there in person. Bruce, Zooming with people I would never see otherwise. Unprompted phone call from my granddaughter to see. Unprompted phone call, ask how, whatever's going on. Training dog on Galveston Beach. These are wonderful thoughts. These are wonderful ideas. So I want to kind of let that sink in, but also move on to another couple of ideas about how we can get in touch with some of this energy. And I want to, let me just tell you the setting here first, and then we'll get into this. Imagine, if you can. Now, they used to have, I guess they still do in some, my car still has a volume, and it has a radio in the car. And there are certain songs that when they come on the radio, whether it's satellite radio or old-fashioned radio, whatever it is, you're riding in the car and you're listening to it, you almost instinctively go for that button, whether it's on the steering wheel or whether it's down on the radio on the dash. You move to that and you crank it up, because it just is a song that enlivens you with joy. So I'm going to tell you about mine. Actually, I'm going to play a little bit of mine. And I want you to think about that. But also, when you remember that song, think about where you first heard it. Think about what was going on in your life. And so let me come here to this. How's the volume on that? We okay?
I'll take it up.
Turn it up a little bit. Yeah, I'd love to keep playing that all the way through, because I'd be moving even on my glitchy knee here. But it's really not about me and my song. It's about recognizing everybody probably has a song that's embedded in their mind. And what I want to do is just give you a few moments to, we're going to break out into some rooms. Ken Roseboom's going to help us break out into some rooms. So there's like 3 guys in a room, and we're going to just talk about the song and recognizing we have different tastes. We have different ideas about what that song is. It's not the song per se. It's what that song does and transports us to a particular time and place in our life that was full of joy. Maybe it's the music itself. Maybe it's something else about the music. It reminds you of that time. So Ken, what we're going to do is we're going to go into this group, and 3 men each room. If we're not quite divisible by 3, there might be 1 with 4 or 1 with 2, and just share for a few minutes what that song is and what that time in your life, where that transports you back to. How we doing, Ken?
Hey, we're ready. 10 minutes, so it gives about 3 minutes a person.
Yep,
and
that'd be
Michael,
great.
My apologies to you. You're headed to a room, but you can get out of it and come back if you'd like. So
Well, I'll probably stick in the room. They already know my song, but I've got more.
Okay, super. Well, see y'all in 10 minutes.
Come back.
Michael,
How
might take.
was that?
Great. Okay.
Ken?
Let people return here. Yeah.
Oh, okay, they're still jumping back in.
Yeah. Got about half our people back now.
Okay.
That was fun.
It was fun.
Good.
Everybody,
Good.
everybody hum a tune.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, music. I mean, and I'm just like Todd. Music is such a big part of our lives, and it's an instant time travel. You can feel how you were in 1959. You can
Yes,
feel the neighborhood,
definitely.
your friends, all just all that stuff.
It is. Mhm. That's what I get out of it. When I listen to the music, I go in my mind where I was when I listened to it. The old music, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So that you can shift your perspective just sometimes by hearing a song.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, Dr. Winters, do you still have a CD player?
I do not. I have a whole bunch of CDs, but my last computer that played CDs, actually, we've got one that played a DVD. I think it just ate the last DVD though. 'Cause it's
Well, then, do you use iTunes?
oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got to get your email address, and I'll send you our new CD on iTunes.
Okay.
All right.
That'd be great. So is everybody back?
I think so.
Okay. Well, good. Well, I want to take just a minute to kind of any processing about that, anything anybody else want to say. I mean, we've already been in that chat a little bit, discussion about how powerful music can be. That's why I wanted to put it in there. It looks like we've got some chat coming in too here.
I think it has a lot to do with the vibrations, our vibration. And that's why music affects us so much, because it tunes our vibration to the beat.
Yeah. Yeah. So the vibrations, you're kind of the, kind of the temporal psychology of it is when you listen to one song a whole lot at one point in time, that you remember that point in time. And if you associate that with positive joy, then you're transported back there. So it's part of how we play music on the radio, and you play it, you play one song, 50 times in 30 days, and it gets planted in your brain with that time frame. So it can also work the other way. If there's a song that you remember that was a really difficult time, it can transport you to that difficult time. But we're hoping today to get more connected to the joy.
Man, if you're not speaking, would you mute your mics, please? Thank you.
Okay, I think we might have some typing or something coming over the airwaves. So I want to shift a little bit now and talk about, we've been getting in touch with joy, but there's also this problem, and this is what Brene Brown says, that joy is probably the most difficult emotion to really feel. And so we want to be present to joy, but we also want to look a little bit at it. And what I think she means by that, actually, if you want to read Daring Greatly, very good book. And what she's talking about is when people are at their most joyful, often there's this foreboding. And she did all these interviews and had people that responded, like when they're standing there watching their child sleep, they're full of joy, but there's also this foreboding because they're wondering about what negative is going to happen in that child's life. They're full of fear about, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to keep sending them to school? Or, hey, their brother got sick, when they were about this age. Is that going to happen to this child or something like that? So that this problem with joy is that we can really get overwhelmed by the negative. It's hard to just stay in the joy. So one of the things that she says is to really focus on gratitude. And so we're going to do a little bit of that in just a moment. But let me tell you some things about gratitude. Now, my wife, who I love and is amazing, in the month of November, she writes 100 gratitudes a day. So she has 3,000 gratitudes by the end of the month. This year I'm joining her. I'm doing 20 because I don't want to be obsessive about it. But one of the things that I find sometimes is actually a more interesting exercise than that. I think it's wonderful. We want to have a broad array of what we are grateful for. But I think another way to do this is to dive deep on one thing that you're grateful for. So let me just tell you about my father. When I was growing up, so there's actually two male role models in this. One is Mr. Holt, who was my 8th grade science teacher. And he started a geology club and took us out to all these places, you know, where we're looking for fossils and things like that near our hometown. Even traveled up. Grew up in Clarksville, Tennessee, about 45 minutes northwest of Nashville. Took us into Nashville because it's a different geological age. And I found a trilobite, which was really cool. Others found shells and stuff, but I found a trilobite there, and that was really fed my scientific curiosity. But my father, he kind of got him involved in the geology, and he started taking me on these little day trips, or sometimes they were overnight trips. And just so you get the context of this, my family is a large family. There were 14 children in our family. So to be able to spend one-on-one time with a parent, you know, there were years that we didn't go on vacation. When the parents went on vacation, they selected like 2 kids because that was manageable, and our grandparents took care of the rest of us. So for me to be able to spend that quality time, because we went to Arkansas from Tennessee, we drove over there to look for quartz crystals and diamonds. And we went to North Carolina because there was sapphires and rubies and emeralds that could be mined there. So we went looking for these precious gems. And what I didn't realize till much later was what was truly precious. Didn't find any diamonds, did find a ruby and a few little sapphires, little tiny emeralds. But the gemstones weren't what was precious. What was precious was I got to spend that one-on-one time with my dad. So I'm going to invite you, and I think it's a great practice to write as many gratitudes as you can, but right now, just take a moment or two, and I think writing it's going to be helpful to go a little bit deeper into one thing that you're grateful for, maybe a person that you're grateful for, a memory of a time that you're grateful. Maybe it's one you haven't thought of for a while. Again, when we're talking about the song in our small group, one person says, I haven't heard this song in a long time. That, you know, we can still find those kernels of time that we're grateful, even if we haven't thought about it for a while. So let's just take a couple of minutes and really focus on that and to go into what you're really grateful for. And this will be able to share, but you don't feel like you have to. Sometimes this might be something comes up that you're not ready to share or will never be ready to share. That's okay. I'm really interested in you getting in touch with what it is that you're grateful for, because that's really a potential pathway to joy. Everybody clear about the task? Okay, go ahead and just write whatever it is that comes up. We want to get as deep as we can, remembering that gratitude and being really present to it.
Michael, you're now out of spotlight. We're now got the gallery view. Is that okay with you?
Oh yeah,
Thank you for
yeah,
sharing.
fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Yeah. was getting anxious there. I didn't know how to get you out of spotlight.
Okay, let's take about 30 more seconds to just finish up what you're writing. See, some people are already posting. Let's just take another few seconds to get the key elements of what it is you're grateful for. Okay. So I'm just curious, just maybe 3 or 4 people just share in a kind of a word or two, what's it like to really take a deep dive into some gratitude? Just you don't have to share what it is. Just I'm curious about the feeling, what it's like to actually take a moment and really focus.
Just it warmed my heart to bring up memories that I hadn't had for a while about my grandfather and my dad and the special times we had together.
Great.
It brings me present. It brings me into the present moment, being grateful.
Isn't that interesting? You're thinking about something from the past, but it brings you into the present because that's where joy lives. You know, joy doesn't really live in the past. That's why when we hear that song, we are there. You know, we can remember joy, but we don't experience joy. And to have this memory, this gratitude brings that moment, our value of this person or this experience, we're experiencing it right now in the moment. Thank you, David.
I'll share. I wrote down something about, I wrote down that I'm grateful for my wife. I dug a little bit deeper, and I didn't really have, there's so many experiences. You know, we've been together for 26 years. There's so many experiences and everything. It's hard to nail down one. But then I realized something, I remembered something that is so basic and so simple. She's not a snorer, and I'm very fortunate for that, but she's got just this teeny tiny little snore that happens, and it's not annoying, it's sweet, and I love it. And there's something about hearing that and being with that, being with her. It's the feeling that it gives me. What's coming to mind right now is groundedness and home. Those are the 2 words that I would use for that, and that's priceless.
That's great. That's great.
So I thought of the 4 instances where my life changed dramatically over 85 years. And they're each about 20 years apart.
Wow. Well, I would love to keep this discussion going, but I know we do have a timetable. So I want to bring in kind of one more thought, and then Ken, this might be, if you want to put me back in the spotlight, just because I have a little graphic here that I wanted to share. And this isn't from a religious perspective, but this symbol of the yin and yang, I think, is really powerful and important to think about in terms of our discovering joy. And the reason I like this message, this symbol, is because, you know, you see at the height of the white color, there's a little bit of dark. And at the height of the dark, there's a little bit of white. And that's how this perspective sees the world, that in our purest of joy, there's a speck of pain. And in the fullness of our grief, there's a tiny speck of joy. So what I want to do is really help us acknowledge as we're rediscovering joy. I don't want to do that in just kind of I'll tell you, here's my story. 17 years old, and I looked at someone and I told them this must be what heaven is like, being stoned and drunk and having an orgasm. You know, that was in my 17-year-old brain what pure joy was. Now, I've shifted a lot from there because those things I know aren't sustainable. Those things might be things that you feel in a moment, and really kind of in a way, especially the alcohol and the pot, you're kind of numbed to really being fully conscious in that moment. So to me, I want to move away from that and move into being able to experience the joy, but also the pain that comes with that. And let me tell you a couple of quick stories, and I want to open up for a little bit of discussion before we have to end. But my father, who I just told you how grateful I was to him for taking me on those trips, the year he died, he had pancreatic cancer, came on suddenly. I visited, I went home and visited for a week, you know, fed him Jello in the hospital, that kind of thing. And then I came back home, and he had gotten out of the hospital. He was at home, and it was February 9th, and that was his birthday. And I got busy, and I didn't call him on his birthday. And then on February 15th, he died. So part of what I see the gratitude about, and part of my experience is I have this gratitude, and I remember it with joy, but I also remember this pain of losing my father. And when we were in the small group talking about the music, one person was talking about John Lennon and the music Imagine, and the association that he had with that was with John Lennon's death. So here's this song full of hope, and yet the memory tied to that is one of grieving. So when we think of rediscovering joy, let's be mindful that there can be that seed of pain in joy, and it doesn't make the joy go away. Still joy, even with that seed of pain. And hopefully we can be aware that even in the depth of our grief, we can discover that little grain of joy. So that's what I had. And I think we've got just a few minutes for discussion, but I would love to hear your thoughts, whatever else comes up for you, maybe how you'll bring some of what we just have been working on the past few minutes into your life. So I'm open for whatever other conversation that we want to have.
Well, Michael, your comments about grief within joy and joy within grief really resonate with me. I've been working on a blog piece that I have titled Growing Up at 70. And it really is all about finally being able to acknowledge and appreciate my own emotions and being able to truly empathetically connect with others. And part of that journey has been going back and looking at who I was as a 19-year-old boy, a 16-year-old boy, and where I was at the time. And it fills me with sadness and grief. That boy that I love, it does fill me with a great deal of grief to realize where I was at the time. And at the same time, though, here I am at 71 years old, alive, joyful, more connected with my wife, my daughter, my granddaughter, and really with any person I run into than I have ever been. And it's been a long journey, but but part of it is the gratitude for recognizing and loving myself as a human being.
I think one of the beauties of maturing and aging, and I really liked what you said, Wayne, one of the beauties of this is coming to the realization that there can be pain within that joy and within that love, and vice versa. I remember hearing something at a gathering many years ago that was really good, that has stuck with me. And that is, our work is not to get rid of the shadow, but to bring the shadow out into the light, so that it is, so that we're always aware of it, and it doesn't trip us up. So when I hear all this, and Michael, when I hear your wrap up, what the word that comes to mind for me is hope. Kind of like Wayne said, when I was a kid, I think I was more ideally thinking. I was ideally thinking that it always had to be joy. It always had to be happy. And I had to eliminate all the other stuff. And then coming to the realization that no, it does blend together and everything kind of is together. The word that then surfaces is hope.
Yeah. So it's always possible to remain in hope, even when things are really down.
Right.
And it's possible to be hopeful, not that it will stay this way forever when things are really good, but that's the natural way, is that there's good and bad, and they're intermixed, and just be grateful in the moment. As somebody said when they checked in, it's a good day to be alive. So far in my life, every day has been a good day to be alive. And I'm thankful that when there were moments when I didn't see that I made it through that. So hope, I think, is great. Thanks.
Well, to me, there's conditional joy and there's unconditional joy. And not to do a spiritual bypass about this thing called unconditional joy, but to be in touch with that observer, that thing that doesn't change, the nature of which for me is a joy that is not dependent upon anything external. The pleasure of a massage and the pain of a cut are part of the same coin. And not that I go into some sort of numbing bliss, but that I have with the observer the joy of being. And I don't know anything about it other than its presence now. So I see a difference between what people call happiness and joy based on the changing circumstances of this changing life, and the ability to do that as well as hold on to that which is unchanging, whose nature to me, maybe I wouldn't call it joy for purposes of clarity, call it that bliss of the observer. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Stephen.
So when Bruce did his presentation, slideshow, and music, it brought me a lot of joy and fond memories, but it also brought a lot of sadness and pain that's no longer part of my life. So the joy was immediate, but followed by those emotions.
Yeah. So the complete package, if you just felt the joy, like my 17-year-old self that didn't want to have any other experience other than ongoing orgasm, being stoned and drunk at the same time, that's not life. But when you can experience the joy tinged by the pain and the negative, then you're fully living because you're open to everything. So to me, I don't want to get rid of pain. I hope to not live in it perpetually, but how do I see that as part of the larger context? And like some of us are talking about is joy, is we can live in that joy, whatever our physical or emotional sensation is at a particular point in time.
Thank you. I think for myself, your comments regarding pain as a beacon on where to go and where to move. Before this work, there was very little context on where to move. What worked was the introduction to this work, obviously, in the mythology. The mythology became a map for me to follow, considering the fact that the external circumstances in life were not guiding. They were stimuli. I was responding. I was living. I was experiencing whatever I was experiencing. There wasn't any camaraderie that mythology, for me, created an immense amount of depth and a recognition that thousands, millions of men or people experience phenomena, and these are the contexts of their wisdom. Regarding being present in the moment and the tinge of pain, it is a guiding beacon today, and in particular for myself is the discovery of the lover piece for myself that was shut down for 54 years. The invitation through pain on direction in choosing where to go and what to experience, knowing that there's something large that's taking place that I cannot contextualizely see. And at the same point, the pieces that fall into place, in hindsight, give me a deep reverence to being moved in knowing in some way that it's perfect. I can't tell you that I had to give up. I had to give up and wait for my name to be called. And when I heard my name called, I stepped in. And I'm incredibly grateful that I did, because I do know I'm alive. Absolutely. And the invitation to a more passionate existence is present. And I embrace it today, consciously. Thanks.
Thank you.
Life
Ken,
is a
are
roller
we
coaster.
at our time?
Got a minute if somebody else has a burning thought? Chris, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Anybody
life
else
is a
has-
roller coaster. You got those long climbs to the top, and then when you get there, it's like, oh, and then you, oh, boy. What a ride it's been, huh?
Michael, I think your words remind me of that saying, and I'll just say it when I see a sunset and I go, that's so beautiful, it hurts. And I think it hurts partly because I am filled with all of life, with all of the joy and the hurt and the cycle of life, looking at something that's like a sunset. So there's that joy with the pain in there. Thanks.
So this is Jim. Am I on?
Yes, you lit up.
Yeah. So why I was late? I was really reflecting on all the elders who are part of me and who have a lot of gratitude for. As an 85-year-old guy, I have a lot of losses, so-called, which are people who are not with me. But Kuffner, Grogan, Ken Rogers, Al Levy, Bob Stecker, Wilbur Gay, all these men were so close to me and gave me so much. So for me, I'm looking at what of them are part of me, and that's really been a wonderful journey. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. By the way, that's a wonderful segue, believe it or not, to our next thing. Michael, thank you. We'll give it one of these, everybody. That awesome. Yeah, I had a text during the last hour that someone said, "Is he getting paid for this?" And I said, "Well, no, this is a gift. Why don't you send him a thank you?" What? Somebody? Ray. I'm gonna mute you, Ray. All right. Yeah, that it was it's his gift, and Michael, just want to thank you so much. Yeah, and that was the invitation. Y'all send him a thank you and a song, and see what else comes up, and hopefully we're all laying at my grandfather's a year from now. So that would be the hope. So a real big thank you from me.
If you need a therapist, Michael's the guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not us that needs a therapy, but it's that person, right? So yeah, that'd be good.
I just put my email in the chat. That wasn't in response to the if you need a therapist. That was somebody else asked me to do that earlier, and I was focused on other things. So I'm not here soliciting, but I am available by Zoom. But you've seen me by Zoom, so that's how it works.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Ray St. Germain, please take us. Talk about remember.
Good morning, everyone. So there comes a time on each weekend where we remember the brothers from our area that have passed. And it used to be on Saturday night during the celebration, and it was kind of people throwing out names, and it was chaotic. But once we had the stones, the circle of stones, a number of us elders started using the reverence of the Sunday morning circle to remember the men's names and to give each man a time and a moment of silence before the next man's name was thrown out. So we're going to scroll through the names of the brothers from our area that have fallen. And when each name comes up, it may be someone that you did your weekend with, was in an I group with, staffed with, or never got a chance to meet. And I just ask you when their names come up, hold these men in your heart. If you have a fond memory of someone, let that bring a smile to your face. And we'll have a time for a little sharing at the end of this presentation. So Ken, you can start rolling the scroll.
Awesome. All right.
Okay, so let's hold on to this square here. Some of the men on this list are the men who have passed recently, and we haven't had a chance to honor them on the weekend. And a few are some men that we weren't aware had passed that we've added to this. So I think there's something in giving voice to a man's name and in remembrance. So David Doherty, Bob Stecker, Vaughn Counts, Ronnie Cox, Wilbur Gay, David Stone, Xavier Barron, Steve Crowder, Al Levy, James Harris, Prentice Jones, and Josh Manzi. So now if there's anybody that you'd like to share a remembrance of or a moment with, now would be the time for that.
I'll put my father, who was not a warrior, initiated man, but nonetheless, Dev Silva.
I feel sad when I read this list, and I know I won't say the names, but I know at least 3 or 4, maybe even 5 of these men that committed suicide. And that makes me extremely sad. I love those men.
There are men on this list that mentored me, and there are men on this list that I mentored, and it makes me sad that they're gone.
It just struck me that there's so many men that we lost too soon. And I had to, when Kevin O'Brien's name came up, it just brought a smile to my face. And I can remember my last conversation with Kevin, and it was just a few months before he passed. Beautiful man.
Hope that's okay.
For me, the name that jumped out was Roy Conley, who was actually part of the initiation of myself and my son, who is a big standing bull, Scott Santiago. Oh.
I was moved by seeing Al Levy's name the first time I've seen it since his death. And before he died, he came over to Maui and we spent time together. And I talked to him in the hospital the day before he passed. And we had a great conversation, and we both knew that it was over. And he just had a huge smile, and we just did whatever we did because we'd known each other for 40 years. And it just struck me anew seeing his name that way. And good news, bad news, I'm not sure, but it just, it brings me a lot of sadness. Amen with that.
I remember seeing James Shin's name on there, and I was in an I group with James, and it was just really shocking to learn of his death many years ago. And it just kind of, I think what strikes me with seeing all of these names is that when I see a younger man passing, I just think to myself, it's not fair, because it's not time yet. And that's such a judgment, but it is what it is, but it just makes me sad.
And I just want to call out Lamont. He just, to me, embodied elderhood. And he just filled that role, at least to me. And when he passed, I was pretty upset. And all the men that have passed this year, I've been upset. But seeing his pictures in the slideshow and everything again kind of brought me back to that. So honoring Lamont.
I didn't realize that David Daugherty had passed. That was a shock to me.
He made a presentation
Gay.
at the Men's
Wilbur
Cafe.
Gay was such a great man that there was a time in my life, because of a bad divorce, that I could not see my children without a supervisor. And Wilbur Gay volunteered his time to come over to my house and help me to see my children. He was a fantastic man and a great mentor. And Vaughn Counts, how many of you have been in a sweat with him? He's been everywhere. If he wasn't on an MOS team, he was staff, and if he wasn't, he was in the lodge. Some great men passed. I know 7 of those last 12. Makes me sad. It also brings me joy that I'm still topside. So the longer I can keep my name off that list, the better off I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, the name that stands out is Price Lewis. A very dear friend who had cancer of the esophagus, and I even what stood out is I had to walk. That was the man I walked with in his challenge. But what was so profound for me was the mentoring that he gave me in the midst of his disease. And the fact that, as I was experiencing some trials, the man had patience to sit with me, to have breakfast with me every Sunday, despite what he was going through. I was incredibly grateful to have known that.
Man, watching this list and seeing those men speaks to what Michael was talking about and the yin yang symbol, as close as we are to the joy. And I had joy with many of the men that I spent time with that are no longer here. And at the same time, there's the aspect and sadness and grief that they're no longer with us, especially my brother Lamont Grogan, who I was really close to. This mix of life where we have the joy of our brothers, and when they're gone, we have the grief, but yet the joy overrides the grief. These were good men, especially Vaughn Counts. Anyway, that's what I have to say.
Can't let it go without mentioning Ken Kuffner. Man, he was the one elder I love so much.
Thank you. I have to mention Ken. A huge smile came to my face. Ken was instrumental in really claiming space for elders on the weekend, not only locally, but nationally. And when I stepped on the elder path about 15 years ago, I went to Ken and I said, Ken, do you have any words of wisdom for me? And he got this very pensive look on his face and kind of, and then he looked at me and just said, never trust a fart. And that was his. And, unfortunately, I know what he means. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if there's anybody else that wants to speak, Ray, are we complete with this? Anything else you want to say?
So how I want to end this is for me and being in this circle, I take comfort in knowing that when I'm no longer above ground, that my name may be spoken on weekends and remembered by men that I love and cherish. So with that, this part of our
I wonder if
afternoon or morning is over. Yeah. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Ray.